Here's my poster for this week. It's titled Transforming Lives, and it looks at the experience of queer students of all kinds in our schools and at home. So this first graph I've titled A Day in the Life Trans Students, and it points out that 79% of trans students frequently heard inappropriate gendered remarks, and 22.5% heard negative gender-related or transphobic comments from teachers daily or weekly at school. And I just want to point out that all of these graphs on my poster are to the same scale, where 100%, for each survey data point is 35 of these boxes on the graph paper. And I have tucked underneath here the sort of calculations I had to do, for example, for this graph of trans students at home with either supportive parents or non-supportive parents. So for instance, this first one, 72% with supportive parents reported life satisfaction. So then I had to multiply that by the 35 squares that make up 100% to see how many squares I should color in on my graph here. The next section is titled Consequences of Victimization, and this data was pulled from the worksheet activities that we worked on in class, and the source was the eGale School Climate Survey, that survey from Canada. And the consequences of victimization: students victimized due to gender identity missed twice as many school days as non-victimized students. And I tried to show that with this ratio here, and I tried to make a little sort of graphic to show that for every one school day missed for a non-victimized student, 2 school days were missed by victimized students due to their gender identity, with this little calendar piece. And then similarly, students victimized due to sexual orientation missed 3 times as many school days as non-victimized students. So that's how I broke that down. And this graph I adapted from the work in our packet as well, and you can see the same sort of calculations I had to do to figure out how many squares I needed to color in on my graphs over here. And the main takeaway from this was that there were 8.3 times more high school than middle school gay-straight alliances, and middle school students experienced 1.7 times more regular physical harassment due to sexual orientation than high school students. So that seems to say that we should be having this conversation earlier in middle schools in order to protect and support our queer students. And I made this graph with data from TSER, which is the Trans Student Educational Resources. And it just compares positive outcomes and negative outcomes of trans students in their home lives, comparing trans students with supportive parents to trans students with non-supportive parents. And you can see that metrics like reported life satisfaction, reported high self-esteem, described mental health as very good or excellent are much higher in trans youth with supportive parents, and negative outcomes like faced housing problems, suffered depression, or attempted suicide are much greater in trans students who live in households with non-supportive parents.